Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show, I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of Superman and Lois. A great season premiere. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. I thought it was interesting where we immediately pick up right where season 1 left off. I mean, it makes sense that we would, but I was actually kind of shocked. Then we get like our 3-month time skip. But obviously we're still in that awkward phase because immediately we get things from like Lois's perspective of her just like time slowing down. She's seeing Natalie run towards her, Natalie calling her mom, and John chasing after her. It's like, no, that's not your mom. It's like, what? But it's like, yeah, this is different. It's like, what? They have a different life here. And John's walking away to explain things, and Clark's like, you should probably say something to her. And Lois couldn't. She just turned and walked away. And obviously we get, like I said, the 3 months later and how much everything's kind of been eating at her. Because I think in that moment, and she talks about it, this was my thought in the trailer, was just like, everything's hitting her all at once. And she really gets into it later on. And I thought it was a powerful scene because obviously this episode led to her and Clark having a massive argument. And even Kyle says it like, I thought you guys were like the perfect couple. You didn't argue. And that's what I think. That's so interesting because I think that's such a real part. Like, yeah, of course, because we as humans don't always do a good job of always. Sometimes it's easier just to keep stuff to ourselves and we never really, we're processing what we're dealing with. And it's hard to always like really explain that to someone else, get across like how you feel sometimes. And I think because sometimes it's just easier not to talk about it because I think talking about it sometimes just makes it more real. But also the thing is, like, right, they seem like they are the perfect couple, which doesn't take away from the fact is that they aren't amazing together. Like, the fact is every couple argues, to some extent. But because even in season 1, it's like they didn't always agree about things, but they are a solid team. And I think this was kind of a nice, showing we aren't a perfect couple. Like, we hit our rough patches. We have our issues, like when we're dealing with something and like we might not be on the same wavelength. Because Clark keeps telling her to reach out to Natalie, but it seems like anytime she tries to reach out to Natalie cuts it off and hasn't reached out back. So they've been living their lives, and we get little snippets of it, like, for what we get in the episode, but it seems like Lois has kind of been like this for the past couple months, and even Jonathan and Jordan are like, how long is this going to last? It's like, I don't know. Because she's kind of very short with not only Clark, but also Jonathan and Jordan throughout the episode, so. But her blowing up at Clark because, obviously she came back home and found Jonathan about to have sex with his girlfriend, which, yes, that's a pretty, we need to have this conversation, but obviously, Lois isn't really in the right mindset at the time just because she's dealing with a lot, and obviously she never bothered to ask Clark, what were you doing? It still doesn't matter. It's still no, first and foremost you need to, you being Clark Kent, being a father, comes first and foremost you being Superman and saving the day. That didn't even enter the argument. It's just obviously because Clark's not trying to make excuses, right, it's just, but even he's you using the device to call me, it's that's for emergencies, something just because one of our children is getting intimate with his significant other, and just for her it just makes it's so now because for her it's just now I sound crazy because I decided to call you in this moment, and so it's just them kind of but I think it's that felt like such a, yes, it's a hyperbolized situation because of the circumstances around, the Superman element of it, but it's such a human moment of I just caught one of our kids, almost having sex and you're acting like it's not a big deal. Even he's no, but it's also they're teenagers, and that's the point. She's yeah, they're teenagers, and you left our teenage son here alone with his girlfriend, because I think Clark didn't think much of it, because he was I wasn't doing anything like that with girls at the time, and she's well, I guess in moments like that, he's taking more after his mother than he's taking after his dad. So I thought that was a powerful moment. But later on, when she snapped at Jordan, especially because Jordan wasn't giving her the answer she wanted, it was almost symbolic of I'm not getting things aren't happening the way I want them to. So obviously she was lashing out both at home and even at work, because Chrissy's every applicant I've tried to find for us, you keep shutting down. She's we need someone that's going to do a good job. But she's but we need help here. We need another reporter on this, which I'm surprised. Well, I guess because he's currently working as an assistant coach. But I was about to say we know that Clark has experience, but I guess it's he might not have it. I don't know. maybe I'm curious, are they going to try and go down that route? Will he start working at the Smallville Gazette? I don't see that. I'd see like, continuing as like a assistant coach at the school will probably be what he ends up continuing to do, at least for now. But I thought that was such a powerful moment when her and Clark were able to talk, and once again, just the beautifulness of their relationship, being able to work past their issues and kind of her opening up. The whole Natalie thing hit her so hard because it brought back her own trauma of their mom leaving them at such a, I don't remember how old they were when their mom left, but for her, she's starting to understand, because like she's looking at it from when Natalie called her mom, she's like, I didn't feel anything. And that's what made her, like, that's what broke Lois in that moment, because like, here's this girl calling you mom, and you know what her connection is to you, but the fact is you feel nothing. I'm sure like the fact is, having lost your own Natalie, it like makes you feel even worse about yourself, because it's like, right, this is my daughter from another reality, but I don't feel any connection to her. Now it makes sense why my mom left. Like, my mom, like, this must be what my mom felt. She felt nothing towards us. That's the only reason why she could have left. And now, like, I wanted to never make a child of mine feel like that. But what did I do? I made a child, like, I'm just like my mom. But Clark is like, no, it's a different circumstance. Like, a very different circumstance. She's your daughter, but she's from a different reality. It's not comparable to what happened with your mom. But it's just, she feels that innate guilt about it, that I didn't feel anything, that I didn't feel this motherly instinct, that because she is my child. But it's like, no, she's not. Like, yes, that there might have been another Lois Lane, but that other Lois Lane might as well just been an entirely different person that was very similar to you. It's kind of how you have to think of it in the grand scheme of things. But that doesn't make it easier. It doesn't make it easier for Natalie. It doesn't make it easier to Lois. Like, she never brings it up, but you know it has to strike a chord because having lost her own Natalie. And so that's actually... And I didn't even think about, like, right, like, what that would mean for both of them. Like, they both lost, like, she lost her Lois, and Lois lost her Natalie. So, it's... Because I think it's important that Lois probably doesn't bring that up, because then it's going to seem like, oh, like, I'm supposed to be your replacement. But even she's like... Because she explains to Natalie, it's like, no, I'm not trying to be your... I'm not trying to replace your mom, and I never will try to replace your mom. I think it would be better for us to both have each other in each other's lives, because I think it will feel some whole, like, but like, there's something there, especially because Natalie feels so alone in this world, because this world isn't the world she knows. Because the problem is, like, right, her world is gone. Everyone she knows is gone. The fact is that, like, right, she goes to her same school, just on a different Earth or whatever, and she runs into people she knows who don't, like, it's like, oh, you're my best friend, oh, but you were my best friend on my reality, in my world, and now it's like, here you don't know me. It's like, I never thought about the implications. I didn't even think they were going to sign her up for school and stuff, but you can tell, like, Natalie's got like a chip on her shoulder, understandably so, because it's just like, we're the aliens here. We're the difference. Everyone else gets to enjoy their life and live it and do whatever they want to, but we continue to be the outsiders. The only person she can connect with is her dad. Even to the point later on, she's like, I should have just died then, because it's just like, And I'm sure for John, that's the hardest thing to hear, because it's like, right, he has his daughter back, but for her to feel like that, to feel so alone, he isn't enough to fill that void. I mean, one person can't be another person's world. Once again, different circumstances, but that's a lesson I had to learn the hard way, relationship wise. I've talked about this time and time again, I made a significant other my entire world, and that's not sustainable. Just like in this regard, it's like, yeah, she's happy to have her dad back, they're reunited and everything, but it doesn't close the wound. The fact is that you feel so much like an outsider, because there's no one you can talk to about this stuff. You have to keep hush hush about it, like, because no one's going to understand in the long run. I do like that, obviously, Lois had, like I said, reached out to them and was able to have this conversation. So they're going to be staying with the Kents for a while until they, figure things out. And I think that works out in the long run, because for one, Jonathan was almost being like, man, like, he found out he had a sister in a different world, and like, right, like, the sis he never got to know. I don't know if Jordan knows about Natalie, like, the Natalie, their mom lost. I don't know, because we know that's a conversation she had with Jonathan. I don't know if that came up with Jordan or not. If it did, it didn't happen on screen, but maybe that's going to make it so that Jonathan and Natalie kind of connect more because of that, like, element of, like, right, knowing what his mom went through, what she lost, but also, like, he made that connection to Natalie, like, right, your sister I never got to know. But it's like cool, you know, get to have another sibling around, which is actually pretty dope. But also it gives them someone else they can talk to. Natalie now has someone else who knows about like, right, the crazy weird situation or like, right, being from a parallel Earth, like all the craziness that is life. I mean, it's like, yeah. Plus, there's also the complication of it doesn't seem as bad because she's probably had 3 months to fully process it, but it does seem like it's still there because, you know, her dad was like, right, let's keep her low profile. She's like, yeah, like being in a mech suit circling the globe with Superman, because it's like, well, there's that, but it's also like, right, it's like essentially trying to say like it's not the same, but it doesn't matter to her. Like, I mean, it took John a long time to kind of like process and deal with like the Clark he knows on this Earth isn't the same one from his, and I think that's still going to be a little bit of a transitional period for Natalie. I think she's still in the process of that. I think so. I thought that was some interesting, like just the human drama element of it all. I mean, obviously there's kind of relationship issues kind of all across the board. There's well, Jonathan and him and Candace seem like they're in a good place, awkward place because of your mom walking in and just right. But Jordan and Sarah are in a complicated space because, well, Sarah came back from like as a counselor from a thing for like a month, and then like Jordan like wants to surprise her and everything, but she was kind of making excuses not to be around Jordan because I think it's the thing, he's getting a little too clingy for her. It's like it's a bit much. It's like early on in the relationship, but I think it's probably like right, like he's never connected with someone like who like. Sarah's probably the first girl that's ever really shown some interest in him. So I get it. Like we all get a little like, oh my God, a girl likes me. Like, what do I do? Like we've all been like that at some point in time. You know, the person you've like been crushing on, you're finally together, and you know it's young puppy love. So he's probably going a little, you know. But also like Jordan is the type of dude who wears his heart on his sleeve. So there's an element of that. So he tried to surprise her. I did like him using his heat vision to light on the camera. She's like, how'd you even do that? He's like, magician doesn't reveal his tricks. But obviously he could tell like something was off, especially because she was like, he should have texted me before he came over here, like all out of nowhere. And I was like, oh, I didn't know that was an issue, you know? And she even ended up talking to her dad later on, and he's like, right, you're the out. Like, it's like, yeah, the reason why he's doing all this is because he's insecure. Like, you know, I mean, truth be told, he's kind of dating, like, batting way out of his league. And she's like, Dad, he's like, just, you're the alpha in the relationship. Maybe you should be the one to set the tone and just, like, let him know, like, what's what. And she's like, oh, that's actually not terrible advice. He's like, yeah, well, that's the bar I'm at as a father, so, but it's like, yeah, like, because he does text her later on when you're looking at those text messages, you're like, oh, that just probably adds more salt to the wound of just like, right, him like, oh, like, was that too much? I'm sorry. Because even later on, it's like, right, you took her to the spot where you guys got arrested last season. He was like, no, I got permission to be there and everything. But it's like, now in retrospect, it's like, maybe it was a little too much. Because even Jonathan was like, oh, maybe. He's like, wait, do you think something? He's like, no, I'm probably thinking too much. It's like, no, like, but it is a little weird that it's like, because for Jonathan, he's kind of seeing the signs of like, oh, it seems like she's probably making excuses, because I guess he's kind of been in that situation with his previous relationship with Eliza. Like maybe that was kind of a thing of like, she kept making excuses until it was just like, right, we can't do this anymore. So I thought that was kind of like a fascinating thing. So it's going to be interesting to see like where things kind of go from there. Like, I hope they don't break up, but you never know. Like, I mean, it's young teenage love, so like, you never know how that could potentially all work out. But other than that, you know, there's also the Kyle and Lana thing, which I love the whole dynamic between Lana and Clark, like, especially because it's like, right, they're both like, you know, it's like, right, because I think that speaks volume, because I mean it's been a long time since they dated in high school, so, but it's still got, I think that still just showcases like, right, they were good friends for so long and then they dated, but like, you know, it's like, right, we're here to kind of talk about like our complications with our significant others. It's like, all right, no matter like, you asked him what's wrong and they act like it's nothing, and then you kind of feel like the bad guy at the end of it, because she's trying to get Kyle to open up, but Kyle kind of has his issues, which even he was like, you know, women are mysteries, you kind of let sleeping dogs lie. Is kind of his philosophy in things. Because he like, you know, Clark had brought it up to Lana. She's like, wait, did he say something? He's like, no, he didn't say anything. I was just curious. She was like, so he did say something. He's like, no, Lana, he didn't say anything. But I thought it was this neat little thing of like them kind of like, yeah, you know, being able to talk about like, right, like what they're going through, what they're dealing with type of situation. Because Kyle, I think, feels a little. It was there last season too. Last season it was more so like some insecurities of like how she kind of got seen as like the chosen one, where it's like I kind of get thrown a little bit to the wayside. Like I think it just struck his pride a little differently. I think it's just him kind of feeling that again. It's like, right, Lana, like, I think much like the Jordan and Sarah thing, maybe it's kind of an insecurity thing of like, right, you're always on to bigger and better things because like, right, like you're so good, like, you know, if anything, I'm kind of holding you back. Like, I'm wondering, you just Kyle kind of feel like that because she's helping the new mayor get elected and everything because we're kind of in that election process, and the guy Daniel, she's helping out. You know, trying to, because she actually pointed like, it's like, oh, what are you going to do about teachers? The teachers' pay hadn't gotten increased in 5 years, and she's the one that was like, this is a conversation we're going to be looking into because he is pro school and stuff like. So it's like, yeah, she's a right person in his corner, and just Kyle just kind of feels like he's fallen to the wayside. Like, oh, let me just go get these like margarita cocktails for you because the lady just shoves her glass in his hand and just that's like, oh, that's all I'm allocated to. That's all I'm good for. So. Trying to find its place in, you know, all of this, I think. But at the end of the day, you know, him and Lana are good, just like Lois and Clark are. So I thought that was kind of pretty neat. But other than that, in the grand scheme of the episode, there's also the Superman side of things, obviously, where we have Clark saving that ship, and now we're still unclear what it is. But based on when I watched the trailer, my thought at the time was, and still potentially is, the Zod thing isn't completely gone because like whatever it is, it's kind of like glowing, just like when Zod was like infiltrating his mind, and it's almost like. It seemed like he was almost getting visions of some. I don't know if that was just supposed to be like inside, like shots to his brain as it's kind of compensating for the other consciousness. But luckily, he saves a ship full of people. Then we kind of get an asterisk beside it because it turns out that ship full of people was a North Korean submarine with nuclear weapons on it or something like that. And then Lieutenant Anderson, which I'll get to in a second, is basically like, yo, you shouldn't have done it. You could have put it on American soil, but Clark is like, he's like, I know you don't get up into the geopolitical element of all of this, but the fact is, and I think this is that awesome conversation about like, right, and I talked about this with the trailer, that it fits very nicely with like the Superman's mission statement changing, because rather for so long it was truth, justice, and the American way, because when that character came out, when it was created, what it symbolized at the time, now what that character symbolizes is, you know, because he isn't just America based, he is, as we can see, internationally based. Like, he is this world's protector, he's this world's shield. And so for him, it's like, I don't just have and you know, he has that conversation with Anderson later on. It's like, my loyalty isn't, I did give my loyalty to the world years ago. It isn't, I won't just serve the U.S. because he won't be allocated to, we want you to do stuff, but only if it's in the interest of saving American lives. And like, you know, it's like, if you do some international saving, just make sure it's in the benefit of the U.S. That should come first and foremost. No. Saving people should come first, because I'm supposed to be a neutral party of, I'll step in when there is danger, when there are lives at stake. Because despite everything, it's like, no matter what the situation, like from a political standpoint, you're like, right, should you have let, you know, but it's also like, no, like for me, I'm just saving lives. I'm not getting caught up in the country's circumstances, or like, I returned a weapon to North Korea. And it's like, I wasn't thinking about that. I was just thinking about lives at stake. Which, really quickly, I should point out about the actor who plays Lieutenant Anderson. I'm like, that's interesting. If I'm not mistaken, that's the actor who plays, and I could be mistaken, but that is the actor who played Peter in Teen Wolf. Because if it is, that's an interesting thing. Once again, if I'm not mistaken, Peter, because it's been a while, so I don't remember as clearly, but Peter was Derek's uncle, wasn't he? Derek was Tyler Hoechlin's character in Teen Wolf. So it's like, yeah, you two being potentially on opposite sides of things, especially considering Peter was a pretty big antagonist, and then conflicting antagonist going forward in the series, because sometimes he was a good guy, sometimes he was just a selfish prick and just out for himself. If that's the case, it's actually interesting too, because It kind of works like that a little bit with Final Fantasy VII as well, because Tyler Hoechlin voices Sephiroth, and the actor who plays Cloud is Theo from Teen Wolf. Not like they were ever adversarial, but it's just interesting, like people from Teen Wolf being on opposite sides of each other. Again, I just think that's interesting. I looked it up just to confirm it, but it totally is him. So like I said, it's interesting how that works out like that. But Clark's still unsure what his circumstances are, like what that was inside of his head. But it wasn't just that. We do see, like, throughout the episode, there are, like, first there was an earthquake early in the episode, and then it happens again, and Clark jumps into action, and ultimately he goes in to save some lives. He does, but the moment he goes in there, he uses heat vision. He sees someone punching some rocks. I'm like, oh, you're probably just going to have to punch your way through. But I'm like, who's that punching? And why would you? Oh, because there's someone on the other side. I'm like, oh, I was like, oh, it's got to be John Henry. Like, he showed up, the aide. I was like, yeah. But it's like, oh, no, it's not. It's people. I'm like, what? I was like, who the hell are you? And why are you wearing that S symbol? Oh, turns out they work for Lieutenant Hale, because he's like, oh, if not Lieutenant Hale, I'm thinking of Peter, whose last name was Hale, just like Derek's was. Regardless, I was thinking, like, I was like, they're Lieutenant Anderson's people. I was like wondering what that was about. I was like, who are you? I was like, what are you, future? Like, what are you people inspired by Superman? What's going on? No, they work for Lieutenant Anderson. There was this school, I guess the one they were setting Tag up to go to, which maybe he's still a part of, for gifted people, and now it's like, right, we're getting American soldiers out of that. So the two people who are like supers are people that work for him. It's like, right, if I can't get your loyalty, he's like, here, I have to return this to you. But once you start putting American needs first and foremost, you can always come back, but till then we can't work together. And I love, because the moment I saw them, I was like, that's kind of effed up that you just jacked that symbol. And even Clark calls him out, he's like, that symbol isn't for you guys to just take whatever and use. Like, that symbol isn't just like for the governments to use. He was like, well, there's enough room for more than one Superman. I'm like, for one, because yeah, that symbol isn't just like some S. It isn't just some it's his family crest. So it's even more of a spit in the face that you took that, you bastard. Because like, obviously, like, the government wants, because Lieutenant Anderson's supposed to be the equivalency of Sam. It's like, right, I'm supposed to be the intermediary between the government and you. They want us to have good relationships. He's like, hey, we don't even have to be best friends. Because he's like, I know all your saves. He's like, I thought I knew you better than anyone. Turns out, I actually don't know you at all. He's like, that's not the case. And he's like, really? And Clark's like, okay, yes, that's true. But Sam, you also had the benefit of, there's a connection, because it's like, right, I'm his son-in-law, which we're keeping that hush-hush, but it's like, you know, there's an even deeper connection there. So he knows the human side of Clark. He knows what Clark represents, because even he had to take a step back from all of this, you know, Sam did. So I think that's going to be such an interesting adversarial relationship going forward, because I know that's going to blow up in the worst way possible. Like, you got all these super people, and even Clark's like, these people don't know what they're up to. He's like, no, they're well trained, they're blah, 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 blah. But it's like, yeah, but Clark's been doing this for a long time. Like, you can do smaller things, sure, but you don't know about the greater threats, the things that the supervillains that Clark has gone up against. It's like, will superpowered people who aren't really properly trained, who haven't been doing this for a long time, because whoever they are, they're not Superman. Like, the supers, you know, Clark and Kara are on a whole other level compared to probably other regular powered people, because we don't know the circumstances of their power-ups. Obviously, we know about Tag's situation, but like, what about anyone else? It just presents a lot of interesting elements, and I think that's going to be interesting when Clark ends up bumping heads. I think that ties in nicely with the whole aspect, because Kyle was kind of pissed about it earlier in the episode, is that they're merchandising off of Superman, and he doesn't want Smallville to become like a tourist trap or whatever. Like, you know, because it's also like, it is kind of messed up that, I mean, like, just using Superman to just kind of sell merchandise like that, just because of it, especially because of like the traumatic and complicated thing that went down because of Morgan Edge. Like, not even just 3 months ago was the conclusion of all of it, you know, so that is kind of jacked up. So I think that does present such an interesting element of the government deciding to pull out their own super soldiers, essentially, you know, so that's definitely going to be interesting, and how that coincides with Clark, because anything that they do will lash back on Clark, because it's like, right, because he's going to have to be like, I denounced them, I'm not the biggest, but there's probably going to be situations where he has to play the political game, even though he doesn't want to, where he has to probably side with them, but he doesn't want to show them support. But the fact is, they rock the family the House of Elcrest. It makes any of their actions fall back on him. So if that's used, if those soldiers are out on the battlefield doing that, then it's like, oh, these are people that like Superman co-signs this because he gave them their symbols. Like, no, he has to be like, put out a public statement like, I do not. So it's going to put him in a very awkward position, I think, around the world, because then, you know, for a lot of people, it's like, oh, Superman has no 100% allegiances, but seeing this House of L symbol on other people, these soldiers, American soldiers, is probably going to spin things, and it's just going to create a very, like, awkward situation internationally, or at least it could. Who knows if they really dive into it'd be really interesting if they dive into the implications of all that. But we also have this thing that's happening beneath the earth, which a moment this stuff, like, we start going beneath the earth, first thing crossed my mind, I'm like, I don't think it's Doomsday or something, right? I'm like, I don't know, because I've seen Doomsday kind of like drop to the Earth's core too many times for me not to like immediately think of that. But I'm like, whatever it was, it looked like it was armor. It didn't look like, at least it looked like the arm we saw shot out. It looked like it was covered in armor, so I don't know what that's about. But a lot of very, very exciting things. I'm excited to see where all this takes us. Most of the shots we saw from the trailer, like I figured, would just be stuff from episode 1. There's some stuff sprinkled in there that I'm like, oh, yeah, those are from future episodes. But I'd say like, 80% of that trailer, from at least my recollection, maybe even like higher, maybe like 90% came from this one episode. So I'm excited to see where the rest of the season ultimately ends up taking us, where the next episode in general takes us. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.